Tonight we're stepping into Yankee Stadium. The year is 1922. Together, we'll witness the construction of the stadium that would become the house that Ruth built. If you enjoyed this journey, like the video, subscribe to Step Into History, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journey into the past.
On May 5, 1922, workers showed up to a 10-acre lumberyard in the Bronx and started digging. There were no ceremonies nor any speeches held, just shovels hitting dirt. 284 days later, they had built the largest baseball stadium America had ever seen. 60,000 seats, 20,000 cubic yards of concrete, over 2,000 tons of structural steel, 500 men working double shifts every single day, and they finished with barely a week to spare. Before Yankee Stadium, no baseball venue in the country had ever been called a stadium.
Let me walk you through exactly how they pulled it off and how I used AI to piece the story together.
The land sat on East 161st Street in the South Bronx, less than a mile from the polo grounds across the Harlem River. It had belonged to the estate of William Waldorf Astor, and the Yankees' co-owners, Colonels Jacob Rupert and Tillinghast 𝐒𝐭𝐞𝐩 Houston, paid $675,000 for it. Before a single shovel broke ground, the site itself presented serious engineering problems. The lot was 10 acres of low-lying land sitting close to the river, which meant the soil was soft, the water table was high, and drainage would have to be built into the foundation from the start. Rupert and Houston hired the Osborne Engineering Company of Cleveland to design the stadium. Osborne was the best in the business. They had designed Fenway Park, Navin Field in Detroit, Braves Field in Boston, and the rebuilt Polo Grounds itself. The fee was $223,000. Their original plans were even larger than what got built. Early renderings showed a fully enclosed, triple-decked bowl, but New York City refused to approve anything taller than 108 feet. That single restriction forced a fundamental redesign. The full third deck was dropped. The middle tier became a mezzanine. The outfield bleachers stayed open to the sky, rather than being enclosed under a third level of concrete. Osborne's engineers then had to recalculate load distribution across the entire structure, the weight the columns would carry, the depth of the footings, and the concrete mix ratios based on the revised configuration. Even scaled back, what remained was unlike anything baseball had ever attempted. 3 tiers, a horseshoe shape wrapping around home plate and down both baselines, with the open end facing the outfield. The footprint required 2 city streets, 158th Street and Cromwell Avenue, to be officially vacated before excavation could begin in earnest. Along the roof line of the upper deck, Rupert specifically requested a decorative copper frieze 16 feet deep, made from 86,000 pounds of sea green Tonkin copper, formed into arched scallops. That frieze was not a cosmetic afterthought. It was engineered into the upper deck structure, and the fabrication would later be done entirely on site to keep the schedule from slipping further. The White Construction Company of New York won the general contractor bid on April 18, 1922, exactly 1 year to the day before the stadium would open. White was known for reinforced concrete work, operating under the motto, "Let White build it out of concrete." They beat out 40 other firms. The initial contract came in at $1.25 million, though costs would climb well past that. The site needed serious preparation. Crews excavated 25,000 cubic yards of soil for the foundation and hauled in another 45,000 cubic yards to fill and level the rest. They used steam shovels where they could, and horses, wagons, and manual labor where they could not. The soil was soft and close to the Harlem River, so drainage was a concern from day one. Osborne's engineers sank test pits across the site to figure out what kind of foundation the ground could support. Rupert had strong connections with Tammany Hall and expected this to be a formality. It was not. Mayor John Francis Hylan unexpectedly requested more information, delaying approval until March 31st. Almost a month of lost time on a project that could not afford any. White compensated by running double shifts. Roughly 500 men worked the site every day. The steel skeleton was erected by the American Bridge Company and Taylor Fichter Steel Construction, while the concrete work was handled by Edison Portland Cement Company, owned by Thomas Edison. Some accounts credited Edison with developing a special type of durable concrete for the project. Whether that was marketing or fact, the stadium's walls were built with 180,000 94-pound bags of Edison cement, and they held up for 85 years. But the steel was late. A national railroad strike in the summer of 1922 delayed shipments by weeks. The structural steel did not arrive until July, pushing the entire timeline back. A local labor strike added further delays. Cash flow problems hit both the Yankees and White Construction, and the Colonels kept issuing change orders. One of the biggest was the bleachers. The original plan called for movable wooden bleachers, but Rupert and Houston decided those would look cheap next to the concrete grandstand and spent an extra $136,000 on concrete footings and matching exterior walls. By mid-September 1922, the stadium was about 30% complete. The bleachers and concrete lower deck were in place. Cranes arrived to begin building the mezzanine and upper tier. There had been hope that the stadium might be ready for the 1922 World Series, but that was never realistic. The Yankees lost the series to the Giants at the Polo Grounds anyway. One columnist predicted the new stadium would be full of vacant seats. He underestimated both the Yankees and Ruth. Through the fall and into a cold, snowy winter, the work continued. The steel skeleton grew upward. In total, 2,500 tons of structural steel and 1,000 tons of reinforcing rebar formed the framework. 3 million boards of lumber went into the bleachers and grandstand. 1 million brass screws held the wooden seating in place. The seats were milled directly on site and installed by a man named 𝐒𝐭𝐤, who was paid $1.50 per seat. That included drilling the metal castings into concrete, fastening the wood slats, and applying primer followed by 2 coats of paint. Meanwhile, groundskeeper Phil Shank was handling the playing field. Shank traveled through New England, New York, and Pennsylvania to find sod he considered good enough. He settled on turf from an undisclosed location on Long Island, and 116,000 square feet of it was shipped to the Bronx. Shank sifted the soil through silk cloth to remove every last pebble. 13,000 cubic yards of topsoil went down before the sod was laid. On November 27, 1922, with Houston watching, the final piece of turf was placed. Snow started falling within minutes. Underneath the grass, an extensive drainage network was installed. 16 pipes under the infield and 11 larger pipes under the outfield, all designed to keep the field playable given its proximity to the Harlem River. As 1923 began, work entered its final and most frantic phase. The upper tier was still being finished. The Colonels successfully lobbied the American and National Leagues to push back the start of the 1923 season by 1 week, buying extra construction time. The American League would open on Wednesday, April 18th, with the Yankees hosting the Boston Red Sox. In December 1922, Colonel Houston announced he wanted to sell his share of the team. He said he was old and tired and that his work was nearly done. Rupert eventually bought Houston out in May 1923 for $1.5 million, becoming the sole owner. But Houston did not leave before putting his stamp on the building. He personally oversaw details as small as the selection of grandstand chairs, a process that took 2 weeks before he found a seat he liked. One of the more innovative features installed in the final months was the scoreboard. It sat on top of the right field bleachers, stood 30 feet tall and 66 feet wide, and was topped by a large clock. It displayed the batting orders of both teams, the ball strikeout count, and live line scores from every major league game happening that day. On a full schedule, it took 3 operators to keep everything updated. For 1923, this was cutting edge. Rupert also insisted the stadium be more than a baseball park. A boxing ring could be set up over second base with an underground vault beneath it for electronic communications equipment. Boxing promoter Tex Rickard, who later built the 3rd Madison Square Garden, lobbied hard for control of all non-baseball events. A running track was built into the outfield, 400 yards around and 24 feet wide, with a mechanism that could raise it for track events and lower it back to field level during games. The playing field itself was intimate in some areas and enormous in others. First and third base sat just 36 feet from the lower grandstand box seats, but straightaway center field was roughly 500 feet from home plate, with a flagpole planted inside the bleachers and considered in play. That massive distance earned the nickname Death Valley. Hitting a home run to dead center at Yankee Stadium became one of the most legendary feats in the sport. And there is one more detail. Buried somewhere near a water main, an anonymous construction worker hid a totem in a pit. Nobody confirmed what it was. Maybe a horseshoe, maybe a religious amulet. Whatever it was meant as a good luck charm. And looking at what happened next, it might have worked. The gates opened on a Wednesday afternoon. The official attendance was announced as 74,217, though the stadium only held about 60,000. The real figure was closer to that, with roughly 25,000 more turned away outside. Before the game, John Philip Sousa led the 7th Regiment Band across the field, playing the Star-Spangled Banner. Players and dignitaries paraded along the baselines. Babe Ruth was presented with an oversized bat in a velvet-lined case. Then came the game. Bottom of the third inning, 2 men on base. Ruth stepped up and drove the ball into the right field bleachers for a 3-run home run. The first homer in Yankee Stadium history. The Yankees beat the Red Sox 4-1. Sports writer Fred Lieb, writing for the New York Evening Telegram, gave the stadium its permanent nickname that evening. He called it the House That Ruth Built. It stuck because it was true. Ruth's popularity had generated the revenue that convinced Rupert and Houston they could fill 60,000 seats. And on the very first day, Ruth delivered. Remember John McGraw, the Giants manager who evicted the Yankees? Jacob Rupert summed it up years later with a single line: "Yankee Stadium was a mistake, and not mine." The Giants' decision to evict the Yankees had created the most iconic sports venue in American history. Within months of opening, the Yankees won their first World Series, beating the Giants themselves in 6 games. The dynasty had begun. Yankee Stadium stood at 161st Street and River Avenue for 85 years. It finally closed after the 2008 season and was demolished in 2010. The site became a public park called Heritage Field. The new Yankee Stadium opened across the street in 2009. Its architects made sure to include one detail from the original: a replica of the copper frieze running along the upper deck, right where it had been in 1923. What started as an eviction became a dynasty. The stadium outlasted the rivalry, outlasted the men who built it, and outlasted every skeptic who called it Rupert's folly. Thank you for watching Step into History. For a brief moment, you stepped into a world that once existed, a stadium that changed baseball forever, a construction project that transformed a simple lumberyard in the Bronx into one of the most iconic sports venues ever built. These stories are more than the past. They are echoes of how we dreamed, built, competed, and left our mark on the world around us. From the first shovels breaking ground in May 1922 to the opening day home run that gave birth to the house that Ruth built, Yankee Stadium became far more than a ballpark. It became a symbol of ambition, engineering, and a dynasty that would shape American sports for generations. If you want to continue exploring the cities, structures, and forgotten projects that shaped our world, subscribe and join the journey. Where should we travel next?